Right, welcome back to another episode of Into the Valley. It feels today, I think, like a therapy session because that was one of the more painful Charlton games I've watched in a long time for various reasons. The ending just epitomising my feelings towards that game. But my God, what a frustrating game. And we're recording this half an hour after the game's ended. And what were your initial thoughts on the game?
Well, obviously, the game as a whole, I thought was fairly even. I think like Portsmouth, they were at home. They looked nervy. Like the game, we knew there was quite a lot on that game because if they win that, they push themselves. Well, that you would have thought that would push them out of the relegation zone. It ended up in the end doing that anyway. So there was a lot on it in terms of for them to get out of the relegation zone, and for us it was to push ourselves away from the relegation zone. So there was, for both sides, there was a lot on it, and it felt that way a little bit. There was a bit of nervousness in the game. I think we went there with all intentions of sort of being a lot more attacking, and I think we did see that we tried to a lot more than we did against Norwich, and we actually did change the lineup. Obviously, there was quite a few changes from Jones, and I think that was with the intention of being a more attacking side, going for the throat a little bit more and trying to push up the pitch. And like I say, I do feel like that was more evident in this game. But what we did is the frustrating thing is that final third of the pitch is still a massive problem for us. And we have said it for a long time now. And I've been really critical of how creative we have been in the middle, or having our midfielders push the ball up the pitch and go on little runs. I think bringing Rankin Costello in was a big plus for me today, because that's exactly what he brought today, was the ability to get his foot on the ball and run past people and actually push us up the pitch. And I know we dropped Carey, and Carey's the other player that does that for us a lot. But so that was a positive for me. But then the biggest negative was we were just toothless again, and to the point where like when we're on top, we're not able to deliver that hammer blow, and then we always seem to get caught with a sucker punch, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and I felt as I watched the game, especially the start of the game, I felt similar to you. I felt there was a team there for the taking. They were low on confidence. They are in front of their own fans, which we know can go one or two ways. For some teams, it creates I think for some teams, it creates a real rally together, and I think that's what we see predominantly more from Charlton. But for some teams, it does create a bit of a nervousness, and I think Portsmouth last season, their home, was where they picked up a lot of points, and clearly this season there's the pressure for that to be the case, and it's not quite been the case, and I think it was quite evident. I think there were that kind of first half, there were so many signs of that, but as you say, for all the positives we can bring from certain decisions that were made, and definitely even brought to light things that I hadn't even thought of myself, such as Rankin Costello dropping into the role that we've been we're screaming out for, and there's some fans who believe Karoy Anderson was the answer. I think today what we've seen is Rankin Costello is potentially... I think
he's got potential.
He's got potential, and whether he's the exact answer, but he definitely is now, of everything that I've seen in that position, he's probably the front runner for me off a performance like that, and I'd like to see that again. But I think there were some really relative unforgivable parts of our game in that, which were the toothlessness, which were the allowing Portsmouth to get back on top of the game, and also just... I feel so perplexed at how we've got to where we have in that game, because, as I say, that first 20 minutes or so, I felt this was a game for the taking, and even going into half-time, I felt similar.
Well, the atmosphere at Fratton Park was pretty flat. Like, it was there, like you said, for us to get our foot on the ball, which I think we did all right at the start. I was going to ask, like, what did you make of that starting lineup? Because I know, like, obviously Jones tweaked the team quite substantially.
I thought it was interesting. I thought we saw a return of the back line being more what, as Charlton fans, I think we want.
I was happy with that.
I don't think it's perfect, and I think predominantly for that system, I think we require both an Amari Bell on the left, but also a Kane Ramsey on the right for the athleticism. I think that's massively integral to the system, because when you have so many people behind the ball, and what we saw in that game was players like Amari Bell, even though he's a centre-back, being an overlap option.
Yeah.
And I think that's really key. And as much as Burke, I think you watch him and he's almost like an excited puppy sometimes when I watch Burke, because I think sometimes he wants to do that part of the game. And there was one moment where I think Lieburn or Kelman in the first half got it out on the wing and tried to play a ball through to Burke on the overlap, and you could tell that he doesn't have the legs for it, and he's not that kind of player. But it's nice to see him at least try to, because I think it shows that system does have its positives in so many weeks of seeing negatives. I think Joe Rankin-Costello was a noticeable improvement on the quality, which we've said about with Corey Anderson putting himself about, but there are question marks over that quality. I think it highlighted some concerns towards, I don't think it's necessarily system, but some personnel, and we're going to go into a little bit more in depth. But for me, the previous episode of the pod highlighted across Bree, and for me did no favours. He angered me a lot in that game and frustrated me, probably more so, and I feel more like you did in the last episode of, I felt so frustrated and somewhat almost like done with that side of it. I feel that to me is now confirmed that where we said, is that an area where we need to look at, and are we going to extend or are we going to do something different? To me, it put a pretty cast iron stone in the fact that we have to improve, and I think for me as well, it highlighted the fact that January is going to be very big for us, because I think investment. I think there are so many parts of our game that are nearly there, but I think they are highlighted that the further investment in a season is needed. And I believe if we do that and we get the right personnel in, I think we are very close to having something that could be very good. But with the current personnel and the current setup, I'm not 100% sure we're there. And I am very, very concerned, having watched the Norwich game, having watched even the Oxford game we won, we kind of edged it and we didn't make it as comfortable as it should have been. And then watching the Portsmouth game, we need to be developing a squad that can comfortably see through these teams. And I know these teams are, all three of which we've talked about there, are teams that have got relative experience. They're not their first year up in the champ, but what the opposition has brought to us, we've not jumped on top of the opportunities, which we see in games like the Southampton game against us. And yes, they're a Premiership team or an ex-Premiership team coming up against us, but they smell blood when the other team's weak, and we don't do that.
I was just about to say as well, a lot of our games throughout the whole of this season have been fine margins. So we've played on the basis of keeping it really tight and getting a goal, nicking a goal. One or two, maybe, if we're lucky, because again, we've not scored many goals this year. And when we're not scoring the goals, like you just used Oxford as a great example, actually, we got the goal in the end, and that was a striker's instinctive finish. When we aren't scoring those type of goals in games where we're keeping it tight, but we're just not either creating the chances or we're not able to put the chances away, we are seriously getting stung. And that what that's meaning is, like, once we go one down, we're like, shit, like we're not a team that scores a load of goals. So all of a sudden, like, as a fan, I'm watching that and I'm thinking, well, where the hell is the goal coming from? Like, and it's a real problem. And you mentioned January. I think there has to be some investment with some sort of, whether it's attacking midfielder, whether it's wingers, whether it's a striker, somebody that can either cause big problems, get some quality into the box, drilled crosses, that sort of thing, or score some goals.
And I think some of that comes down to the management as well, saying this is the direction we're going in. Because what I feel towards the signings, if we're going to push towards whatever it might be, and we know the system we play, but I think we play so many variations of it that I think there's got to be a clarity from the management side to say, do you know what? What we're going to do is we're going to keep playing TC out on the left. We're going to then need to get this character of person in on the right. And for that system, we're going to need this character of person in here. And I'm not saying that needs to be the end game, but for me, that is so integral, because at the moment, it feels like we're very much putting kind of square pegs in round holes.
Do you not think striker's a huge problem for us though? Like we're repetitively starting Lieburn, who's clearly not. Has he scored this season? I think has he scored? I don't know if he scored a goal this season.
Bear with me, caller.
Yeah,
I'll let you know.
I'd love to know.
I think he
If
did.
he has, he might have scored one.
I think he did in the cup, maybe, but
yeah, in the league, I'm not sure he scored a goal.
we've just got some loading issues,
Yeah.
so I'll let you know in a sec.
I'd love to know, but
But
anyway,
I think it's irrelevant. I think we've seen so many times, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which is Leeburn, for an example. I don't think, and we discussed this straight away, whether did Leeburn have a poor game today? I don't know. I don't think. I think what he was handed to him.
Not massively.
And I think in the first 20, 30 minutes, I thought we might see the good side of Leeburn. I thought there was some quite important kind of. I saw him high pressing. I thought start of the second half, he had a really good high press as well. But there was too much to it to. I think it highlights some kind of concerns I have against Kelman. For me, is going to be a starter. I don't think Kelman and Leeburn work. So to me, then Leeburn becomes backup. But we need to find the answer.
Exactly, but then the problem is we've got Leeburn, but then who comes in? You got Alafe, who's clearly not
raw.
really. He's too raw. He's not really performing. You haven't really got anyone else, so it's a dying shame that Godden has been out for so long, and whether he comes back, I don't even know if he will. But not to have another option on the bench to come on and be like, or start a game and be like, right, I'm going to tuck some goals away today, give you something a bit different up top rather than the big man. Like it is a real problem.
Got one goal in 20 games, and I'm pretty sure it's a cup goal.
Yeah, I'm not sure he scored a league goal. So anyway, this just highlights exactly where the problems are. You've got an on-off Kelman who's obviously been out of injury, who clearly has the ability to score goals, but he's still trying to start up. And then you got Alafe, who thinks he's got one goal against Sheffield United that was like a last-minute winner. But we've got real problems with scoring goals, and that is probably the crux of where we're really struggling now.
I think the difficulty in the game today was I didn't see, and I think it's a good chance to go actually into that first half, because for me, I don't feel there's many games where I'll be critical of the strikers and getting into the right positions and this, that, the other. And I think there is some criticism that will come to them out of this comment. The most frustrating thing of that whole first half was all of the build-up play led to one moment where we could create a chance. And every single time we failed miserably. And there was a point where I think there was a Leeburn flick onto Kelman. He couldn't quite get it, and it just all went a bit janky. There was a moment where I believe Berry picked up the ball, could have played a first-time pass into Leeburn, and I'm pretty sure he's in on goal. And he hesitates.
It's those final little moments
that
they're problematic because we're not making those right decisions, or we're, like you said, we're delaying the pass. And then what that's doing is it's like putting us on the back foot, and then it allows the defence then to get in behind us again. And so we're not getting those clear-cut chances, which teams predominantly in the Championship will create 2 or 3 good clear-cut chances in a game. And we don't do that. So then when we're not doing that and we're not scoring goals from set pieces, where the fuck is the goal coming from?
Yeah, well, and also the problem, you're in the Championship. When you're on top in a game, most Championship games, and we've seen this merry-go-round of results where someone will beat someone and then they'll beat the other person who beat the team before, and it's this madness that sits in there. But generally, you're going to have in most games, there's the odd occasion a team gets trounced, but most games, you both ebb and flow, and it's the teams who take advantage when they're on top. And we do it so infrequently when we're on top. And I think that first half was such a great example. There was an opportunity. I would say, I feel in that first half, we were definitely clearly the better team, the more comfortable team, and there was something for the opportunity there. But actually, if I said the physical chances we came out of that first half were relatively limited. And that concerns me, because if when we are on top of games, we cannot take anything. And I look back to the Norwich game, for example, as much as we created absolutely nothing, we were handed many opportunities to create something. We were handed the ball where a keeper kicks it out straight to your bloody centre mid and you're on an attack with numbers. We don't take advantage of those moments. And I can't quite put my finger on it. And I believe today, there's an element of personnel that I think was an issue. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if it's a coaching thing. I'm struggling to put my finger on it. But if we keep going into games with this mindset and with this attitude and with this output, we will get dragged into trouble.
We kind of are, right?
But I genuinely believe everything there means that we shouldn't be. And that's what's so frustrating, because at the core of what we've got, we should have today beaten Portsmouth.
I think the biggest frustration for me is there's spells of dominance in games for us, even if it's not dominance, spells of threats in games, threatening times in games, spells, but zero end product. And it's been like that's been a consistent thing for a while now. And I there's a few, like you said, I think it's partly down to personnel and not actually having the players there to actually create these chances. But midfield's been a problem for a while, in my opinion, like creativity in the middle, which I will keep talking about that. But consistency, wing players, Bree all of a sudden playing like he doesn't know how to kick a ball, and not offering anything else apart from that.
But a prime example in that first half is you've got TC up against Devlin. And I'm not saying that I felt like the lad had a bad game, but TC, I think, had the taking of him.
He did.
I don't think he
They
offered
stood off him as well.
I know, but I don't think he offered anything towards actually taking advantage of that.
No.
But I don't know what the flip side answer is, because I don't believe the answer is, okay, if we had to put Tanto there, for example, would that have made a difference? Because we're having the same criticisms towards him because he's an up and down player.
But TC's the sort of player you want in that scenario. You've got a wing back who's sitting off you, so that's perfect for TC. Like to run at him, and he did have a few moments where he stood him up and ran at him
towards the end of the game,
and also not enough. Not enough. We've got the whole game, like pretty much like big spells of that game where we had quite a good foot on the ball, and towards the end of the game it was bombardment. They were just sat on the edge of their box, and we were just constantly going at them, but we just couldn't. Well, we could break them down. We did get the goal, but we'll go on to that. But,
well, that's probably. Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad time to move into that second half. And I felt the second half started. I think we had a 5-minute period in that game where I thought, okay, we've come out like we did the first half. We're going to take the ball by the horns and we're going to do what we did against Oxford. And I think that quickly filtered out. And I actually think Portsmouth started getting a real foothold on the game. I don't think they were doing anything incredibly impressive, but I thought we were. Every time we got the ball, we were lumping it. We had very little kind of decision making on what we were going to do. It was just a very straightforward, almost caveman-esque, I'm going to lump it and we're just going to hope for the best. And I thought they were getting the foot on the ball. They looked a bit more confident on it. They were creating chances. I mean, I suppose from there we'll move on to what was probably, prior to the goal, their biggest opportunity, which was that Swanson who put it off over. I mean, I think he must have been 10 yards out. Kaminsky saved it, and how that boy's put over.
What I will say though, I think it might have been Coventry actually, when just as he was about to hit it, he sort of slid right in front of him, and I think that might have put him off a little bit. He should have been tucking it, whatever happened, to be fair. But
I think no matter what,
you've got to tuck that.
You have to be tucking it. But I felt they were knocking on the door, and I felt like personally they had become the stronger team. Now, they are a home team in a relegation battle. I expect there will be parts of the game, but there's got to be a response. And what I'm finding disappointing to a Charlton team that has been built on charisma, just pure battling nature. And for my opinion, that second half, I found myself getting increasingly frustrated. I didn't see that fight. I didn't see that desire. And where my biggest frustration to that point came is I felt we were screaming out for needing a bit of change, and that just never came. I was profusely swearing at my bloody laptop I was watching it on, because I was so frustrated watching the game and thinking we need a change, we need some impetus, we need something.
Especially with a player like Luke Berry, who I do rate, and I do think he's still got something to give us, but I still think he's going to be he should be used as more of an impact sort of player, where he's got a bit of experience in the end of a game. He's going to tire. He's barely played any minutes. He's going to tire in a game like that, and he was running around like he was giving it his all. But he was one that needed changing out a lot earlier. But another point I'd just like to make as well is, in what I've noticed in a few of these games where we are maybe 0-0 after half time, and we're needing that sort of experienced player to sort of get their foot on the ball. Norwich have it with Kenny McLean. He's like the sort of player that they really rely on to get your foot on the ball, take it down and take control of the game. And they use that a lot. And they used him in against us, and they obviously went on and won the game. Today, I'm not saying Marlon Pack is an absolute worldie of a player, but
I think he had overall a relatively poor game in many ways.
But he is the sort of player that gets his foot on the ball, takes a bit of control, takes a bit of charge. And you're right, maybe he didn't have his greatest game, but he's still someone that will take the game by the scruff of the neck a little bit, and maybe get players around him, say, all right, we're going to push up the pitch now. They managed to start playing the ball out to the left-hand, the right-hand side, pushing up the pitch more. I still think we really lack that like leadership player in
But
that
is that
crucial.
away from leadership? Is that leadership, or is it just championship experience?
And
I
it's
think
ability. It's ability.
and its
as well.
ability to a certain extent. But I think that's where we've highlighted in this squad. We need much more reliable heads who aren't going to necessarily. And it's not all about technical ability or performance. It is sometimes about the footballing mind, and we've discussed this quite a few times.
Playing the right passes.
Playing the right passes, but also being a leader. I think what's concerning me is I do think there is leaders in this squad, and we've gone through many years as Charlton fans of really struggling. I mean, I remember at one point Dobson was our leader, and I don't think he was a great leader. I think he's a very good player,
Yeah.
but I don't think he's a leader. And we had some very dark times where we didn't have that. I don't see the person, and what I would say to that, and it's a really difficult one because we've got one player in our midst who is our club captain, who is that, but we have so many concerns about other parts of his game. But Doherty, the one thing I will say about that boy, he
does rally a little.
he's a leader. You see the passion. And I felt like there were points where exactly what you're saying there, where we needed something like that. We needed someone to almost shake the shit out.
Do you know what? We have a fear as well. This is another thing I've noticed. We have a fear of sort of like playing through the lines. And I don't know whether that's because, again, we just feel like we're not able to do it, or that we're just not on our game, so we're not going to attempt it. But the amount of times the ball sits quite deep with Coventry, with with Bell. And then the ball will get knocked back to either Jones or Gillespie when he came on. And pretty much every time again, it's like, well, let's bypass the midfield and just lump it up. And again, it's like, the more the game goes on, that's what we resort to. And fair enough, like we're desperate for a goal at the end, so we're going to start lumping it. But that happens far too regularly, and I think it's because we have a real fear and a lack of a leadership in that middle to just someone get the bloody ball and just dribble it out of the pitch and get past somebody and then play a nice pass out left, right. But we seem to just be incapable at times.
Well, and I think it moves to the worst part of the game, which realistically, well, not the worst part. It seemed like the worst part of the time, but 69th minute, Connor Shaughnessy. Probably butchered the pronunciation there. I know it's not my strong point, but god awful defending. I mean, it was the most basic free header, placed it well. It was. I'm not going to spend too much time talking over it because it was just poor defending.
Yeah.
It was classic of what that game was going to do, which was if we don't take advantage, there'll be corners. They were increasing pressure, and it happened. It was a very, very difficult game from that point, and the difficulty was Portsmouth played it pretty much to perfection of making that game very, very hard, going down for injuries, slowing down the game.
Well, they shut up shop as well.
Yeah, they shut up shop, and I thought we were huffing and puffing, but it wasn't really. And, I mean, I think it was the 83rd, 84th minute that we made the subs, that there was an increased impetus because they were doing what they needed to do very well. But at that point, we did have that little bit of extra energy. We did have that bit of difference.
Yeah.
I thought Nibs showed that probably quite well. It also will be a time where my breaking point came, and I think something we haven't discussed in this game. I think the officials in that game were absolutely diabolical, and to me, I will not use it as an excuse because I believe every Charlton Athletic player there has to take the responsibility of that game, and it was our fault. But my Christ, the officials did not make it easy because I thought they were up there with the worst I've seen all season, and not for
that's some going as well.
But and I don't believe it was for an individual. I think we've had worse individual moments where a penalty is given, a this is given, a whatever, a red card, whatever it might be. But for an overall game and allowing, I found myself infuriated the amount of free kicks they were getting towards the end, slowing down the game. Yeah. And I have to admit, it got to the point where I was like, he must have a bet on the game because it was just, I just found it absolutely awful.
I think at one point he gave a foul for like one of their players falling over their own man. Yeah. Like when that's happening, you're like, okay.
Like Lever not making any connection, but he's going down holding his head, and he just gave it. And I just saw really, really awful.
But you're right though. That is, although the officials were god awful, we can't use that as a...
Well, of course we can't, because the realistic side is they were awful because we put ourselves into the position where they became increasingly frustrated. But we had the opportunities in that game, and what you've always got to accept as a football fan is you can be critical of all the officials and this, that, the other, and there is games where they completely change it. But all their decisions were frustrating because of the position we were in.
Yeah.
We had every opportunity within that game to make the officials frustrating but acceptable.
Also,
because
we could have used that to our
Yep.
advantage. We go 1-0 up. We probably start the dark arts, and the ref will probably lap that up. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. But that isn't the way it went, and
Mm.
we huffed and we puffed, and it felt like a mirror image, really, of Watford at the first game of the season at home, and Harvey Nibbs. The corner comes in, header over. I think it was from Lloyd Jones.
It was.
Harvey Nibbs. I'm going to put it out there. Relatively average header,
Yeah,
which
he's
the keeper
just connected, isn't he?
He connected. The keeper, I think there's maybe some question marks. It all looked a bit panicky, but it went in, and I absolutely lost my mind.
Yeah.
I was running around the living room. I was making a right old tit of myself. My wife was sitting there going, "Christ, what's happened? You scared me." And yeah, I felt like, do you know what? We've had all of those negatives, and I think I was gearing up, because I think every Charlton game I watch now, I gear up to what our thoughts are going to be after the game.
Mm.
And I think everything up to there had been, this is such a missed opportunity, this is such a poor performance. But that draw allowed it to be frustrating, but not too...
Well, also, you go away from Fratton Park with a point. You're like, okay.
Well, also, it's not too catastrophic. I think it highlighted the fact we needed those subs earlier. I think the chaos they caused and the fact we had that. I also have to admit, the fact there was only 5 minutes of added time to me
seemed
a joke as well, because I swear that whole last 10 minutes was pretty much paused the whole time.
Yeah.
Keeper going down, players going down. From there, I can't explain it. And Min Hyuk Yang, with what I can only describe as, and I think the only way I can describe it as a Charlton fan is, if you score in the 96th minute with 95 plus, 90 plus 5, it is utterly unacceptable in any capacity, because all you have got is one kick. And I can't tell you the goal. I haven't watched the highlights.
Can I just say, we scored a 94th minute goal in the playoff final, Patrick Bauer, right? And I remember Sunderland pumping the ball up and literally we had seconds on the clock. And all that had to happen, Jason Pearce got his head on it, bang, end of the game. Literally, the ref blew the whistle. All we had to do there, head on the ball, get rid of it, whistle's blown.
Do you think the head was lost in the fact of we're celebrating so hard?
Maybe.
Do you think we just we thought we've got the draw?
Maybe.
Because to me,
that's unacceptable too. You're professional footballers. Like, at the end of the day, I get it. You're going wild, and fair play. You should do, because you've saved the game. Switch on. As soon as that ball is played, you're professional. Like I say, you're back to just do your job. Also, if you watch it back, I think at least two players went for the same ball. And I guess that's like the sort of eagerness to just get your head on it and just see the game out. But then we've left people open on the edge of our own box, ready to just tuck it. Now, there's question marks again on the defending. There's question marks on the goalkeeping. But in general, like that, like you say,
but I think you can put question marks over, like, for example, the goalkeeping. I think that, look, you can always, and I haven't seen it back since. I'm going to slam down my laptop harder than anything, and I just went inside pacing around my hallway. But the realistic side is, I think the fact you're letting yourself into a position where the keeper's got to make a save of stopping a goal going in that moment is pretty abhorrent. And the realistic side is that as I say, is unacceptable. And I honestly believe, I think there are lots of criticisms, and I've got a lot of criticisms that we're going to go on to in regards to even the management side of things and how that game panned out. That is completely and utterly 100% on the players, and I think they should be going home pretty much head in their hands, pretty ashamed of the fact that you've managed to pretty much clutch from the jaws of defeat in a relatively okay performance, but some real negatives to take from that. Yeah, I mean, to
it's
allow...
a head scratcher, to say the least, and I think it's one of those where, as a fan, like, I thought we'd cut that bull crap out our game a long time ago. Like, we've seen it in the past where we've done that. We've just thrown something away literally last second of a game, but we haven't for a long time, because we've been solid.
The last game I can remember is as gut-wrenching, and it wasn't as gut-wrenching because I think at the time it was to draw the game, I think we absolutely smashed and grabbed against Barnsley last season. It was Luke Berry who knocked it over, and then I think they went and scored pretty much afterwards, straight away. But we're talking League One, And also just the magnitude of what it was. And I think it was so important now going into the next game. We're creating this pressure bubble, which the unfortunate side is we're creating a pressure bubble ourselves rather than, and I think the way I'd end on this game before we go into individual is rather than going fair play, Portsmouth turned up and did a job on us or did this, that, the other. I'm walking away from Norwich and I'm walking away from the Portsmouth game going,
bit bitter.
we're bitter
I feel
because
bitter.
we've in my opinion, through our own performance, we've almost offered it to them on a platter. Whereas I believe, granted, they are on the day the better team because they have beaten us, but there was an opportunity there, and we did not take that opportunity with really any impetus or anything. Because even in this game, how many chances can you actually describe that were clear-cut chances where we broke through? And that is becoming a real issue. And then to unacceptably almost get a get-out-of-jail-free card and go and let that happen is just...
Yeah.
There's got to be some serious question marks over...
But we said that there needs to be an inquest into the last game. There certainly needs to be one in the end, majority of that game, I would say, because whoever's in charge of the sort of attacking, coaching side of the game, I understand we're limited to what we have to work with, but there has got to be a way that we can get things clicking
But
better.
there's many teams who, with poor players, do... And I think it's something Nathan Jones has actually shown himself to be relatively good at. I think he took a pretty poor Charlton side that he adapted to and he brought players in, but realistically off a pretty low base and with not huge amount of investment, he turned a Charlton team that was pretty poor with similar players into very good. And I don't think, as I say, it just worries me that some of the mindsets that we've been so accustomed to with Nathan Jones seem so distant to some of the performances we've had recently.
Yeah. I mean...
And I think this summed it up better than any, because we're the team who go and score in the 90th minute. We're the team that apply pressure.
Yeah, it's flipped. It's done a
Yeah, it did.
now.
But I feel like now, as the 70th minute goes in, and we conceded in that moment, kind of 60th, 70th minute, and then we're going into being the team now, and we're pretty, let's be honest, as most Charlton fans, we're pretty terrible at chasing the game. We're the team who get a goal, hold off, absorb all the pressure, and get the goal and hold on to it. And it seems like we're going down a very different approach at the moment.
It is worrying, and I think this January window's become more and more crucial for us, actually. We have to get some quality in the top end of the pitch, in my opinion. It has to happen.
Yeah, and I think we've got to get somewhat more like-for-like replacements in certain positions as well, who might be a step down, but at least of the similar type and style of player, because I think that's something we've also really struggled with this season when you are replacing. And yes, there is. To me, I was watching games like today, and I look at how much I miss, and I have missed for a long time, Josh Edwards. We've got to have similar calibre. Yes, they're a step down, but most teams have a system they play, and they have a similar, maybe not quite as good, that's the reason they're on the bench, but a replacement who can come in and do a similar style job. And I think there's such a lack of that, and we're kind of chopping around with all these different systems and all these different styles of play. And I think the answer is, honestly, I don't even think Nathan Jones at the moment knows what the answer is, and I think that's why we're saying we're seeing Rob Actor at left back, then we're seeing Ono Hernandez at left wing back, and then we're seeing TC at left wing back, and then we're seeing Ibby Fuller. There's a serious concern there, and I think one of the things I will say to it is I think there is a very big question mark over not in any way tenure, but over decision making that has come.
It's also
to
adaptability of a system. We've got to find a way of like adapting to certain games. And look, if the wing back system really isn't working anymore, maybe we've got to look at changing that up.
But have we got a worst case scenario that in a scenario where that's not working, and it doesn't feel like it is, and I think the pressure comes to Nathan Jones, which is in the position we're in, and I have every confidence we will come out the other end of this, but I think it's highlighted where maybe even he had underestimated what certain positions and how important they are and what having a good backup to that position is. Other sides of that are you can only spend so much and you can only invest so much, and we had a lot of players, a lot of money and a lot of investment, and maybe it is going to take, but what we have now got is such an important January to sort those positions out.
Bloody important fixtures coming up. We've got Blackburn coming up. We've got our game in hands against Portsmouth at home. These are big games, and we're putting a lot of bloody pressure on ourselves. Let's see what we can do. But I mean, January's big. Some fixtures coming up that are really tough. I mean, we've got Coventry at home next, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But
We'll talk about that in a bit. I think what we did want to go on to is the kind of the good side of the game in regards to certain players that did impress, and I think even for all our frustrations, there were some real positives to take out of this game, especially in certain positions. And I think there is some clear negatives of certain players that come out of it as well. So I think one to start on, and I think for me it highlighted how important, but a caveat to he has his fitness issues and he has his this and he has his that. I think I would like to start on Amari Bell.
So yeah, I think bringing Amari Bell back in, we know he is probably of our three best back three. You've got Bell, Jones, and you'd argue Ramsey. They're the three that probably are our most solid.
Look,
athletic,
everyone fit, yeah.
Everyone fit. They're the ones. So having him back in is like our first choice, sort of left-sided centre back, and it shows he's very comfortable on the ball. We've always talked about how well he can sort of dribble the ball out of play. He's very calm. He's good at passing. He can overlap, which I think you mentioned earlier about how he was good at overlapping TC, which he's done throughout the time he's played in that sort of position. And he's able to play that left wing back role as well. So he's, like I say, he's got the athleticism to get himself up the pitch. But he's very good defensively as well, though. And he covers back. He's got the pace and he's good in the air. So he showed all those attributes again today. And I just think he's integral to like us being back to our best at the back of the pitch.
Yeah, and I think he ticks all the boxes, really, doesn't he? And I think there's so many traits of what he offers. For me, the overlap was a massive, massive positive, and it's not an overlapping wing-back, because we don't have the wing-back who overlaps onto a winger. We have a wing-back who, realistically, is relatively isolated. And I think when we play both Amari Bell and Ramsey, they will... So someone like Amari Bell will push on past, someone else will cover him. We've got two relative holding mids, albeit Coventry's the more defensive of the two. And we have a system where everyone adapts to whatever happens. And when someone does push on, and we saw even glimpses of, say, Burke trying that. Not as successfully. But I think with Amari Bell as well, the one thing that is so noticeable with him as well is that I think we've got a lot of defenders where when it gets tough, their first priority is lump it. And I understand it with Lloyd Jones, for example. He's a very traditional defender. He's quite bread and butter. And I even understand it somewhat with Gillespie for a similar reason, but he also does have a bit of a ping on him as well. But with Amari Bell, what I really like is that he'll wait for a player to press him and then he'll just do...
dribble past it.
Yeah, a bit of a dribble past or he'll fake shot and then bring it in and then he'll look for the pass.
And I think those today.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that not every single player's doing it, because then you might get in trouble. When you've got just one player who maybe does it a bit more, and I think Ramsey also does it on the other side a little bit more when he's confident, I think it shows how important that starting lineup of centre-backs and what we've missed actually so much over those tougher games. And does increase my confidence, weirdly, that in a game where we need to be on top, and this Portsmouth game, we just don't seem to have the massive ability to do it. But it does breed a bit more confidence, actually, when I see performances like Amari Bell and someone else we're going to go on to, is it does breed a bit more confidence into, say, the Coventry game, where I look at it and go, actually, do you know what? What we're best at is sitting back, and actually we can create chances, and maybe we're more effective against... not necessarily Coventry because they are so good, but we are more effective against maybe better teams when we have got our full starting lineup, and maybe that is where we pick up the better amount of points.
I think also Gillespie is not the sort of player that has the pace and the athleticism to sprint back if he's struggling, whereas Bell can do that. He's got the ability to sort of get back into position a lot quicker, and that helps as well, because even if he is pushing up the pitch, he's able to get himself back a lot quicker, whereas Gillespie, he can't do that. If he pushed himself that high up the pitch, then we're in big trouble. So again, he offers that sort of that get out of jail card sometimes when we're getting pushed.
Yeah, and I think from coming back from injury, we've only seen him really play that left wing back role, maybe kind of push back into this left-sided centre-back when there was an injury in a game or whatever. But I think seeing him back in that role that we probably most likely signed him for, I think it showed how how good and how important he is. And I think once we have the Jones, Ramsey and Bell, with Burke kind of dropping in between those, how strong that kind of is and how desperate.
But then that system starts to make more sense.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. It's like when we've got those players in the square pegs and the square holes, it makes sense. When we haven't, it exposes us. So
Yeah.
so actually having him back in there did actually show when we have him there that actually the system works better.
No, definitely. I think it works on to then the next one, and I thought, no necessarily criticism to him. I thought Lloyd Jones had a good game, but I thought the other noticeable one, especially in that back lineup, was Reece Burke.
I think, yeah, I'd definitely go along with that. And considering how he's sort of been out of the side again, had injuries, he's come back in.
He definitely looked rusty at times.
He
I
is
thought there was
rusty.
definitely you could tell it was a player who's coming back from injury. I think there were certain decisions he made that weren't necessarily what he would make at full fitness, and I think there were elements of just getting back into the game. But I think what he offered as a whole, and as I say, that whole defensive unit, as poor as we were in certain other parts of the pitch and how difficult we made it for ourselves, I think they were a big reason why we still felt so confident.
We're a lot more solid. When you've got that solid base at the back, you can be a bit more calm.
We felt back to what we feel, which is even in any game, and I think Reece Burke epitomised this, was when we had that back line, whether we went through points of the game where we did look poorer, I felt very confident in what we offered.
Well, also, we defended better. So they had a couple of, and there was one really nice moment from Burke where one of their wingers was trying to get past him. He's clattered him twice and got the ball cleanly and got back up and dribbled the ball up the pitch. And those are moments where actually it's like, oh, it's actually quite refreshing to see someone actually just put their foot in, win the ball back, and then push us up the pitch. And he offers that. We talk about him a lot when we do mention Burke. He's not, again, the most absolutely gifted on the ball, but he is a frame. He's a big boy.
He's also a very clever player. He'll take down a player when it's right.
Yeah.
Maybe even, and I noticed
he's experienced, isn't he?
He's very experienced. He'll take down a player when it's not quite even a yellow card, but it's just broken up the play.
But he's tall, he's physical, and he, as a defender, he offers us that. He gives us that more stability. He's not slow either. He can track back. So again, it's like,
I thought the only moment, I think there was one where I think it was their boy, who I didn't think had the greatest game, Blair. I think he had little moments, but I thought there was one moment where I think Blair kicked it around him. You could tell he wasn't. He's not absolutely.
He's definitely not electric. No. But obviously, someone like Bell can catch him up. But yeah,
he's not Patrick Bowers.
No, or Per Mertesacker. But he what he does offer, and we saw it today, is a strength, a leadership, a type of leadership at the back that we probably been missing a little bit, and someone that just has a little bit more composure on the ball and able to sort of push us up. So I was really impressed with him, and especially being out of the side for a while, it was quite refreshing to see him back in, and also just having him as an option to rotate the back line. So
I think that's where he was side. I don't think he was ever side. And I think the realistic side is Bell, Jones, Ramsey is the starting lineup with everyone fit. But knowing he's back in there now as an option, and when there is the injuries there, that he will step in, I have no worry. And a bit like we said at the beginning of the season, the fact that anyone could step in, he kind of sits into that anyone that we felt so confident with. I think the only negative I would say towards Burke is that he wears his shorts very high. It looks like he's running around in hot pants.
What's that, like 70s, 80s?
Yeah, it's very, it feels like it feels like we've very much gone back in time with Burke. But
he's got very long legs.
Pull the shorts down a bit. But overall very good performance. So the final one that I think probably took me by surprise most, and especially when I saw the starting lineup, and I think it was intentionally to a certain extent, because when Charlton announced it, I think he was the photo behind it. Joe Rankin Costello, and I have to admit, we've discussed of the concerns over our central midfield and the fact that I think Coventry, as much as any fan can feel whatever they do, I think he's a very good, at championship level, he's a very good holding mid with his limitations, but he's a good player. I think we've got the Carey, Nibs. Yeah, consistent. I think we've got the Carey, Nibs, Berry, who can play in that cam, but we have got real issues around that centre mid role and someone taking the reins. We felt Doherty poor at the beginning of the season, then got on top and then fell poor again. Anderson's come in to try and plug that gap. I think we all know my opinions towards Anderson. I really like him as a personality, and I think as a player, I always want an academy product to do well, but I don't think he's quite there, although he has some attributes that I think are positive. Rankin Costello is not one we've discussed in that role, and I think because he's had such little involvement in the squad, we don't know, is he backup right back, is he backup this, because I know he is quite a versatile player, but I thought seeing him in that role today, albeit he still felt rusty, and there were times where I felt like maybe he could have pushed forward a bit more with the ball, I thought overall he was the kind of shining light in that centre mid role.
He was, and he had, so again, I've been crying out for a midfielder who's willing to take the ball on and just dribble past a few players and open up some holes and gaps in teams. And he had some really nice little triangle bits of play. He did a couple with TC. He had one where he played him right in, and he got a shot away, didn't he? And I think it got blocked. But he had some really nice play where he was positive. And this is the thing, having a midfielder who's positive enough to just bring the ball forwards and open the pitch up. And this is something we've missed for a long time, and he brought that today. And if he could continue to do that, I would be more than comfortable with him getting some more game time and some starting minutes, because we are desperate for that in this moment, for someone to get the ball by the scruff of the neck, get the game by the scruff of the neck, and just go for it, just push us up the pitch.
Well, I think when we've looked at all those players who have come in recently, albeit I think Doherty for a little while we felt was probably the answer and he had turned his fortunes. I think we've seen Doherty go from low to up to back low. I think we're probably quite accepting of the fact that maybe he's not. Roy Anderson, as I say, the feelings. But I think with Costello, what he showed today was that I think he has, especially as what our system offers, a lot of answers to what that role needs.
Yeah.
I think the only argument towards it would be the athleticism maybe that a Roy Anderson brings Max in. I think if you could hybrid probably the technical ability of a Rankin Costello with the physicality of Roy Anderson, that's probably the ideal player. Obviously easier said than done, but I've been saying it for a while. I think Roy Anderson with a slight higher technical ability is pretty much what we need as that big breaker, and almost, I know it's Premier League, but it reminds me of almost like what Moussa Sissoko used to do in the Premier and stuff like that. I think it's that style of player that we are so screaming out for.
With Costello though as well, I think what he does bring his experience. He had a lot of games for Blackburn, and that was at a high level, championship level. So he's used to playing in these games where it's thick and fast, it's championship football. So again, he brings some experience, but also he brings something that he's used to, sort of the game. He's used to that level of the game. So therefore, he's able to just sort of hopefully just sit in and actually get his foot on the ball. And he does come across as fairly comfortable on the ball. I think he had some shaky games when he first came in, but that's understandable because he had no minutes.
When you're coming on for like the last 6 minutes of the game, last 8 minutes of the game, you're not going to feel confident. And I think
time to build that up.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think at the moment, if we're looking at that conversation, do I think he's the absolute answer long term? Probably not. But I think you've also got the fight and a desire of a player who has played second fiddle at Blackburn for a long time.
He's got something to
in his early days of Charlton career, played second fiddle to everyone else. And actually, this is his moment. Say, hand up here, you know, I am here and I can prove a point and I can be effective.
But my other thing as well is you said about maybe not long term, but I'm not sure he was brought in long term. I think he's brought in as an experienced head that can sort of do a job for this moment in time where we are in our sort of transition. So he, like you said, if he takes that by the, takes that opportunity by the scruff of the neck, he could go on to be actually really valuable for us in this.
Well, I have to admit, of all the performances recently, he's the one that I would now say, to me, the next game, I want to see that again.
Yeah,
and I think that is potentially an answer. I'm not going to get too carried away because I think we've been in this position before where we thought Roy Anderson coming in maybe.
Well, and Doherty.
Yeah, and even Doherty at times before. But I think it's now his chance, and I think we've got to give him a run in the side unless we go and sign someone who fits in there perfectly for that exact reason. I think he's now got to be given that opportunity of a few games, and I would personally, off the back of his performance today, be starting him against Coventry.
I would.
So moving on to the negatives, and I don't think this is as critical as maybe the outlay against Norwich, but I think there was still signs of certain players, and also a bit of switch up to the norm of where we'll apply the criticism. So I think starting off, and I think it's probably the one that breaks the norm, is I'm going to put my first criticism right on Nathan Jones' shoulders, and I think he has got to take a lot of blame for this game, because I think there's a personnel side that I think there were some impressive decisions made, but clearly against the team we came up against, maybe that starting lineup needed to be a bit different, and I would look at players like Berry. I believe Nib should have been given that opportunity, and I feel like probably suited the game better with his physicality, with his athleticism. I feel that would have made a big difference in the game and may have freed up our strikers to have a little bit more opportunity. My biggest criticism to him, and the one that I found I was screaming at the screen, was I cannot understand a game that was so tight. We were dropping out of it, and we were there in the 84th minute, I think, or 83rd minute, having made our first subs. And you look at Portsmouth, who made their subs in the late 60s, I think 70th
I think they
minute.
brought 4 changes.
Yeah, and I
not
think
one goal, hasn't
Shaughnessy, who came on and scored, was one of the subs.
Mm.
And I'm not saying he had an incredible game, but the realistic side was they saw the impetus, they were on top of the game, and they made the change, and they took advantage. And I think there's some real management issues in that game, and I'm not jumping onto any bandwagon of it being any management issues long term, but I think that game he's got to take a bit of
But
responsibility.
what's even more frustrating is when Jones makes substitutions, they change games. Look at Oxford. He brought Kelman and Campbell on, and they both came on and changed the game and got the goal. So Jones is wily enough, and he understands the game enough to know how to change the game. And it happened again today when he brought those subs on. It did push us on forward, and I know naturally Pompey would drop in deep, but bringing players like Nibs on, who's physical, who's willing to sort of put himself in the mixer, got us the goal.
But I believe if those changes were made earlier, we had the opportunity. I believe I think it was about the late 50s that I felt something wasn't quite right. And I felt there were positions like Luke Berry, who we've seen, who predominantly has been cameos 20, 30 minutes, 60 minutes in. He needs to come off the pitch. I think we see, don't want to spoil it, but someone we are going to go on to, which is James Bree, who I felt once again was having a pretty poor performance. And we had someone like an Apter who could create something out of nothing. And I think that's what that game was screaming out for.
Yeah, I agree.
The fact we didn't make the changes there, yes, they worked towards the end, but Christ, they could have been the difference between us going 1-0 up. And the one thing I'll always still say, even about this Charlton team, is when we go 1-0 up, I still feel incredibly confident. And even the way we were playing in this game set up to that beautifully, which was if you can just get that goal and sit in, there's not a huge amount of teams, and as much as teams towards the top who will break us down, who will break us down completely. And especially when we're more towards our strength at the back, which we felt in that game, I just found it so bizarre. And I know he had subs on the bench lining up just before the goal, but that goal goes in, that's the best reason to do it.
Yeah.
And we waited another 12, 13, 14
But the
minutes.
other thing is as well, like we set ourselves up, you're right, like we set ourselves up to sort of get that first goal and then be really resolute and just see the game out. So that first goal in games for us is crucial. And at that moment where we probably, like you said, with a Berry, for example, who's tiring, Bree, who's not on it at all, making those little tweaks and getting the players on the pitch, like you said, Apter, and players like Nibs, who are really hungry and ready to change a game, could have been the difference between us getting that first goal and then seeing the game out.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that is one that I have a real struggle with at the moment. I can understand the Apter scenario, because as much as I think a lot of Charlton fans are critical, I can understand Jones does not want to, at left wing back and right wing back, play two wingers. And TC, we all know, is his preferred winger. That is no doubt. And I'm not sure that will be the case over complete and utter time, but at the moment that is it. And he does have a lot of loyalty towards certain players. I think the bits I struggle with, for example, are, for example, James Bree. James Bree is a big... I think that...
Should we go on to him?
Yeah, I think probably to move on to, and I think
Anytime.
it is Jones. I think there's some real critical decisions, and I think James Bree is one of them. And I think let's move on to him now. For me, James Bree had a marginally better game than the Norwich game, but I thought his deliveries were still poor. I thought at best they were average. I thought his tracking back and his lack of pace was noticeable. I thought that went the way on both defence, but more increasingly I'm noticing it in the attack. If you're gonna have that style of player, he has to have an incredible upside in moments, and what we're not seeing is that incredible upside. And the most noticeable, as I think we were discussing before, is that he hit a counter at one point, and he was so pretty much slow and just not the kind of player you want on a counter that he just slowed it all down. We ended up playing it back around the back.
I think he lost the ball.
Yeah,
I think he just got
tackled. Yeah, maybe got tackled or lost the ball.
Possession.
For me, the ultimate frustration to that is if you're going to play a system that is relatively ultra defensive in hitting on the counter, James Bree is not the answer, and we need someone who, whether you wanted to be someone who's more technical like a James Bree, that's who we believe at the beginning was what we were getting, and we saw such positive signs, it has to still be someone who is physical,
Yeah.
has plus sides to the other side of the game, and
Well,
also can get the ball up quickly.
if you've got that physicality, that athleticism, like Kane Ramsey, for
Mm.
example. Now, I know usually he plays in the right of a back three, but he could play at right wing back because he's got that athleticism to be able to, even if he's off his game, he's still going to be able to recover, to defend. He's a fairly good natural defender. If Bree is going to play at right wing back, he has to offer us. We've said this the whole time, that quality ball, that quality crossing or the quality passing. He hasn't offered that for a long time now. He doesn't offer us defensive stability because that's not a part of his game that he feels comfortable with, from what I can gather. So what does he offer us if he's not bringing that other part of his game, and he's not bringing us pace or any sort of threat going forwards for a while now? That has to be looked at. That has to be looked at seriously, in my opinion, because it's a very weak link in the side.
My worry is, we've been saying this for a while now, and I know we're relatively limited on just like kind of choices to replace that with. I think there is an argument, and you said it earlier, which I think is one I haven't thought about, is there an argument of Burke, Jones and Bell with playing Ramsey out there? I don't hate it. I think it's more a backup when we need it, and I think that is probably the natural backup, a bit like how Bell will move out.
At least he can defend.
Yeah, and I think he can move out to left wing back. I think as well, Ramsey is on the slightly more attacking side.
Yeah.
Could play that role quite nicely. To me, I think every nail in the coffin, I don't want Bree renewed for his loan. I think he's given us what he has, and he's given us some brilliant moments.
No,
He's given us
yes,
some
yes.
really crucial points this season, but I think the system does not suit him. And I think the only way it suits him is if, a bit like James Ward-Prowse, for example, where he just is a set-piece specialist and he brings moments, but he's lost that. His head doesn't seem quite in it. I've got some real alarm bells around him. And for me, that's done dusted. I could happily not see him in a Charlton shirt again. I know that sounds so harsh, but I've just got to the end of my tether with it. And I don't see a world where my worry is, I think Nathan Jones quite likes him.
I was just about to say the same thing.
And I think he might sign him.
I was just about to say exactly the same thing, and I just don't think he fits that. Look, it's easy for us to say that now things aren't going well, and at the time it did go well. But even then, I think the only reason it did go well was because he was so on it with his deliveries. But for so long now, he hasn't been. So then what does he offer us in that position? I don't think it works.
I think the only way I can get excited is if I see us sign a right wing back in the first few days of the transfer market, and then I can think, okay, maybe we're not going to. But I don't know if I'd have an awful feeling. Look, there's much worse players we've had in history who you could bring into the club, but at the moment, I feel it is a big issue. And if we are, what frustrates me is, for example, and I think it's where we can move on to our final player, which is TC.
Yeah.
And I look at, for example, and I know we're relatively limited on this side, but I'm hoping with someone like Russolon, who hopefully is getting up to speed now, if we can get him out on the left and Apter on the right, for example, I think it maybe gives Bree the break in regards to he's clearly in a tough time towards things. If we are going to sign him long term, I still think he needs a break. I still feel that towards TC, and I think the substitute performances towards it helped, but I just didn't quite. I thought he was having one of his off games today. I thought there were little moments, but the moments where he stood up against a player and you just want him to run and cause chaos. And I just felt there was I say he had such the winning of Devlin in so many ways, but I don't think he took advantage of it enough. And for a player like that to work, he has to be ballsy. He has to be not consistent with finishing and not consistent with assists, but I still want to see him every game running up against players, causing chaos. And I just thought it was a game where, do you know what, until, granted he has some chances towards the end, and I think he had one that he hit quite well. Argument say I'd rather see it on target than going wide of the post again, but
it was a decent effort.
It was a decent effort, but seeing that towards the end of the game when it is opening up is not where I want to see it. I want to see it at the beginning of the game. I want to see you being the player that is actually going to get us 1-0 up. Is going to cause chaos, not being the player who becomes effective when we go 1-0 down and they're sitting back.
You're right as well about being ballsy. Hug the touchline. Really scream for that ball. When you see that there's a player that you've got on toast, like you can run at all day long for 90 minutes of the game. Like, you need to be sort of wanting that ball. And sometimes my concern with Campbell has always been, to an extent, is sometimes he hides a little bit, or he shrinks in games, and we've seen it where he sort of pulls out of 50-50s. He's a little bit, he looks almost as if he's a little bit not feeling the game at the time. Today I wouldn't put that on him so much. I don't think it was the case that he wasn't up for it, and I think when he had the ball and when he ran at him, he looked positive. He just doesn't do it enough. And I really, really get frustrated with him because we say it all the bloody time, but he's got so much ability. He has got the raw attributes to really frighten defenders. And I just think he needs to be more commanding on that side of the pitch and just scream for the ball and just run at people.
Do you think it's a position we need to find competition for?
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think truthfully Ono Hernandez is true.
He's not seen as a long
I don't
term.
think he's seen as a long term. I think Josh Edwards obviously comes back into that. Look, full fitness, TC isn't playing there. I think I have some of the concerns I have about him at left wing back as I do about him at striker. I think there needs to be a bit more competition. I think there needs to be.
That's the only caveat, I guess, to today is that he's playing out. He's not a left wing back. Like, he isn't.
But is he? But I think my concerns don't come about the fact that realistically playing left wing back, he will be more defensive. And I actually thought that was probably the most positive part of his game.
Yeah, he wasn't bad.
Carried back, he got some quite good positions, and he actually pressed quite well. Sometimes his pace at left wing back is frightening in getting back when they're on the counter. I actually thought I can see the effectiveness of some of the defensive nature of having such a rapid, quick wing back. But my problem is when he picks up the ball then in the attacking position, you've still got to be effective there. That is still your key role. And if I'm going into a game with TC at left wing back saying I was more impressed with his tracking back than I was about his wing play, there's problems.
Yeah, no,
because the problem is we're talking about creativity. We're talking about someone taking the ball by the horns. I'm not sure the strikers are going to be the people that we say ball by the horns to the kind of strikers we've got are predominantly more goal-scoring strikers, flick-on strikers.
My sort of caveat maybe is, in a little way, is do you think the way that Jones plays Campbell, I know he's predominantly played at left wing-back this season, do you think that hampers him a little bit, and that we'd see the best out of maybe a front three where he's off the striker, off the, like a sort of almost Mo Salah sort of stuff?
Do we? I think we do sometimes.
We try and play him there when we can, I think. And
has he looked massively different at left wing back? Are we talking about, are we having the same conversations when he's playing at left wing back as we are when he's playing a striker off the left?
Probably.
I think we are having the same conversations, which is fierce inconsistency. I actually, I can actually sit here and say some of his positives were on the defending side. We're still, those attacking positions are the same ones he's in, whether he's a striker. And I actually think in striker there's some actual other negatives. I think he sometimes struggles with positioning. But I think we're having the same conversations in that position as to that, which then becomes an inherent issue with him, albeit one that I want him to solve. And I do still accept he's young.
It's an ongoing frustration. I think he, by all means, I don't think he was terrible today. I won't.
No, but we cannot afford, and I said this in the last game and I say it again, we cannot afford to have 3 or 4 inconsistent players in our starting lineup.
There were too many players that are regularly inconsistent.
But I think the fear, for example, TC in that game, it's a classic game for him to get hooked. I think the natural replacement is Tanto.
Yeah.
We're having the same conversation. I'm sure there's a conversation around Nathan Jones thinking, what Tanto am I going to get?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah,
we need to have, I think, in that squad, even if he's slightly older, not as quick, we need to have
someone you can rely on.
And you look, there's so many examples of that throughout the Championship. And I'm not saying
it's where we get caught out against teams we play.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we need to go and get like a Sorba Thomas or something like that. But realistically, we need someone who's got Championship experience that actually, when you need that quality on the ball, yes, they may not be the absolute best iteration of themselves that they've been over the years, but someone who has actually got that experience and consistency. Because if we can consistently play that system with consistent performances, I'm confident we have no problem.
Even a side like Sheffield Wednesday are able to bring in. Recently, they brought in Nathan Redmond. Now, I'm not saying he's going to light it up for them.
That's perfect.
But that's someone with experience who would genuinely be a threat. Like, that's a good example of just somebody with a bit of like experience.
But that is pretty much on the tee of what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's not that we're saying that's the long-term answer, but having someone, and also someone who maybe has that ability and has played at a certain level that can mentor TC to become a better player. We've seen that, and like a great example of that is like players like Danny Hilton. He never came in to be our striker. He had some lovely cameos that were brilliant, but he was brought in to bring experience to other strikers to teach them things, and I think we need need that in this squad at the moment.
100% we do, yeah.
Well, there we go. Portsmouth.
Oh, man.
Christ. We will get there. We will get there at some point, I'm sure. And I think it's highlighted. What I find, and I think it's so important as well, if we do not learn our lessons from that game and put them to the sword at the Valley and get those 3 points at the Valley, that will be extremely concerning, because I think we can prove with the right system and the right players and the right mindset that we should be beating a team like that.
We should.
Well, it gets nice and easy now. We've got all the hard games out of the way, all the big hitters in the league, and at the Valley on January 1st, we'll welcome Coventry.
What a lovely way to start the year. Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I mean,
there's positives to take from Coventry. They're not the Coventry who a few games ago were, absolutely tearing teams apart. I think they've shown some chinks in their armour, and they've lost. To be fair, tonight against Ipswich, so it's not like they've lost to a
we beat Ipswich 3-0.
Yeah, we beat Ipswich 3-0. So this is that whole circle that we'll see people online going, but they beat them and they beat them, and now Charlton beat Coventry at the Valley. But no, look, no doubt about it, it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah.
I feel confident towards. I think some of the bits we saw today, we are going to have a lot less of the ball. They are going to be the kind of team who are going to be on top. I think positives of the game we've just seen are that defensive solidity being back there in some capacity a game like this may suit us currently better than others, a bit like it did in the Birmingham game.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt about it. There's parts of the game that we have definitely we cannot sit in against them.
Well, don't forget, we went 1-0 up against them away from home, so we got the ability to score goals against them, or a goal against them. If we can do that at the Valley, and if somehow manage to get the first goal in that game, you never know. Like, weirder things have happened. Football is mental. Championship football is mental, and we don't know what we're gonna see when we come up against them at the Valley.
What do you expect starting lineup wise? Do you think this is similar? I know difficulty with the injuries and stuff.
I don't know. Leeburn, for example, is one that I think I'd like to see some change up top. I'm getting really fed up of just seeing us flick the ball on.
But the problem with Leeburn, I completely am with the answer of that, and I think that is something we need to. Leeburn needs to come out of the squad. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I think he's had some good games. I think he's had predominantly bad games. I think he needs to come out of the squad. We need to look at a different option. I personally, against a team like Coventry, think we've now got Kelman back. Hopefully we can get a 90 minutes out of him. I'd like to see Kelman with... No, I wouldn't. I'd like to see Nibs and Carey.
Okay.
Nibs, Carey. I'd like to play the box midfield. I think pack out that midfield, get a bit more creativity in there, get a bit more of a press up there.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Harvey Nibs, either Luke Berry or Sonny Carey. Hopefully Sonny Carey's back.
Yeah.
Rankin Costello, and then Coventry the other side. Play those wing backs. Try and play it through the middle a bit. Try and get those overlaps going.
Yeah.
For me, that is I
would be against that.
Well, also I think it starts to come away from. Are you just going to keep lumping it up to Kelman?
Yeah.
No, maybe you'll start to get it on the floor. Maybe you'll get it.
You can't just keep lumping up.
Well, no, and I just think maybe maybe at the moment that is a bit of an answer, and I think we've got to keep trying things different, because clearly whatever we're doing isn't quite working. And if the creativity can come out of packing that midfield and Carey and Nibs getting a bit of a kind of relationship between each other and playing the ball between each other and playing it in behind. The one thing I will say is, and I don't think he had his best game, but Kelman, I think he does show little glimpses in game of being a bit of a level above in regards to his mindset, his positioning. He's
always quite clever the way he plays.
I think he's a smart player, and I think if we can actually get those passes into him and let him make those runs, I do think we've got some ability there. And what are we gaining from playing this two up top where we lump it and Leeburn just flicks it on to Kelman, who's not in the quite right position, or to a wing back who's way too defensive because of the way our system's based? I just don't see it working.
No, we have to make some change at the top of the pitch, and however Jones ends up doing that, I do want to see some change. And like, you're right, I think we need some ball playing midfielders to pack it out in the middle of the park, so otherwise we will get overrun completely in that game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, it is, as I say, coming now to the end of the episode now. So begrudgingly, we will bring up the league table. So there it is. Yeah. We're still 5 points clear. I think one of the concerns when it does come to that is one of the teams obviously in there is Norwich, who, albeit they lost tonight, are starting to hit a bit of form. And I think as a team being in the bottom three, they're not the kind of team you want chasing you.
Yeah.
But it's definitely starting to get to the point where our favourite word of our buffer.
Yeah,
We are at the max kind of territory of we need to now start picking up points to build that back out.
The two positives I see from it is we've still got to play Portsmouth at home for our game in hand. If we win that, then again it pushes us a bit further away. We're playing a team directly below us, but also we've got Blackburn after Coventry, which again is another massive game now. We're putting a lot of pressure on these games especially around the teams that are near the bottom. But we are still, if you look at that table, it's still tight. There's about 4 or 5 teams within about 2 or 3 points of each other. So a couple of wins does massively boost you back up.
We've got a game in hand, and if we pick up 3 points and then say win our game in hand, which is a big if at the moment.
It's really easy to say, yeah.
But we can quite easily be back up in 14th, 15th.
Yeah.
But we've got to start picking up those results. And the game in hand is only valuable if you get the 3 points.
Yeah,
and that is where we've got to start. We can't keep having these conversations. And the more we go on, the realistic side is over the last 10 games, we have dropped from a very, very positive position, which I don't think anyone expected us to stay. But we have got to start now taking a bit of, albeit I still feel comfortable. I'm still the optimistic Charlton fan who thinks with some additions and what we've got there and with all our injuries kind of back that we will be okay. But we are starting to teeter towards my worrying side of okay, which is we can't get complacent. We can't just keep thinking that. And we have got to start picking up results, especially against teams like Portsmouth and the kind of games we're going into where there is opportunity.
But also we have to remember that Portsmouth are fighting for their life. So they're not going to come to the Valley and just roll over. So these are games that we talk about, if we win our game in hand, but it's not going to be as simple as that. And also if we cannot tuck some of these chances away or create chances, let alone tuck some away, then we're in big trouble. But there's a long way to go. We've got a big January coming up.
I think an exciting January.
Yeah,
an important one, and probably the most important January we've had of recent years. I think there's years.
The owners will know that.
Yeah, and I think there's clearly as well the owners have shown some impetus on. You don't chuck 10 mil into the squad in the summer just to go, okay, we've done 10 mil. That's it. I think the realistic side is it's
the start, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a clear one thing Charlton have shown this season so well is there clearly is at times what we do and how we do it is right.
Yeah.
And it's picked up some incredible moments this season and some incredible results. But we've got to find the personnel that are going to do that on a more, consistency.
We cannot just sleepwalk into the relegation zone, though.
That's what it feels like a little bit at the moment. I think we've got to break a cycle, which felt like maybe the Oxford game was with the opportunity of games. But realistically, we're talking about the Oxford game, the Pompey game, the Norwich game. And we've come out of that with 3 points. Yeah, we played well in, but we didn't blow away. So we've got to start turning a bit of a corner when it comes to it. So, there it is, the end of the episode. So this will be the final episode of this year, which is quite incredible. One thing I'd just like to say personally, real big thank you for the support. Obviously, something we started up at the beginning of the season, but appreciate so much all the kind of comments, the subscribers, all of the support towards the channel. It's something I can speak for myself, but I think yourself too. We've really, really enjoyed doing, and hopefully you've enjoyed it too. I think we've got some exciting plans kind of going forward. But yeah, just a time to really appreciate all the love and support for everything.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like we give our opinions, and at the end of the day, like we have our own views on things. We know other fans are going to disagree with us, but at the same time, like we're all in it together. We all want the best for our club, and like we love watching Charlton week in, week out, and even if we lose games in the 96th minute, like we did tonight, we're there for the ride, aren't we? It's ups, downs. That's what it's there, isn't it?
I had a full head of hair before the 98th minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's where we end it. So say thank you for everything. I hope everyone has a really lovely New Year. We'll be back on, we'll be recording the episode on New Year's Day, so out the next morning. And yeah, hope everyone has a brilliant time. We'll see you on the next one.